the top thing is off.
Yeah,
now we got quite a bit of...
nice.
And so what questions you have of me?
Let's see. Well, last time I was here, you were looking for a new location, and everybody kept saying Baltimore, 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 and it happened.
No, this way.
Yeah.
Well, initially it didn't happen purposefully.
Okay.
We had, when we were informed that we were getting out, and they were shutting the place down.
Yeah.
They had given us one extension. We asked them for a second extension because basically any money that we were making was going to be being used to move, break down, and find another place. So we had started, I'd say at least 4 months before we had to totally leave looking for a new location. And we went everywhere. I mean, within our metro area, because I couldn't move. I have a family here. I've been here. We built our own house, so I can't pick up and go anywhere. Not if I want to keep a wife.
Right. It's an important project, but you know, the family is more important.
It is. I mean,
absolutely.
My wife has been incredibly supportive of this whole project. When I don't know if I would be that supportive of a crazy endeavor that she would do.
That's amazing.
But
yeah.
As long as she's known me, which is just about 30 years, maybe a little more than 30 years, she's known that I was interested in pinball.
Did you collect pinball machines before that? Like, did you?
No.
Like, so.
I started collecting pinball machines when I moved here to Washington. I played pinball since I was 4. And I did own 2 pinball machines when I was teaching in Ohio, but I sold them right back before I moved. But not until I got to Washington, to Maryland, I would pass a amusement store. It's called Rockville Home Amusement. Probably every 4th or 5th day of the week. And I kept saying, don't go into that place. Because I knew that if I would see pinball machines, something would happen. And I was absolutely right. I went in finally one day when I was feeling, oh, what the hell. And I went in, and I had not been that up on the new stuff in pinball, so I was shocked to see how pinball had advanced.
When was this? What year or time frame?
80s. And I hadn't seen pinball since mid-70s.
Okay.
So I saw games that I was really...
So the jump from EM to solid state, and the sounds and the ramps and the...
Yeah, I mean, I was used to pinball being a one level, one ball, interesting art game. I never saw a ramp, never saw a wire, troughs, or plastic traps underneath, all that kind of stuff. And sound was so minimal when I was playing pinball that just all of the things were amazing. And then there's dot matrix and all this kind of stuff. I was blind. So I entered this place, and I was playing these games, and I had played a game in, I guess it was mid-70s, called Fireball, in a bus terminal in Marbella, Spain, when I was on vacation with my girlfriend. I'd never seen that game before, and I was, you know, the potential of multiple, spinning disc, zipper flippers. I went nuts. I was at the bus terminal more than I was at the beach.
Yeah.
So, and it was a Spanish conversion.
Right.
So there were words on the game that were in Spanish, and Casellas, whatever it was the coinage, and it said it on it. So when I went to this Rockville Home Amusement, there was a fireball, and I went completely nuts. Again, you know, I was concerned about going in the first place, and then seeing the game that I was so wild about. I said, "How much is this game?" And the guy said, "Oh, listen, first of all, it's really not in good shape. It's missing some plastic, so it's a lot of..." I said, "Okay." So he said, $200. So I said, "Fine." And so that was my first game that I really bought that started my collecting in earnest. And that was the game that I kind of experimented on. I started to network with people to find out, where do I get parts for this? This is missing. You've got pictures of it. And little by little, I kind of brought that game back to as close to what it should have been. There's still a little artwork missing on the play field, but not bad. And that's still in the collection here at the museum.
Right, that's the one you have playable that I played last time.
Right.
And it plays just fine.
And after that purchase, I remember my wife and I liked it so much that we kept it in the living room as a nightlight. We kept it on all night. Because the backlash is so wonderful that the reds and yellows and oranges are all lit up. And I don't know how long it was between that game and my second game, which was Apollo, a Williams game, that things started like I started going out of control. Because I know the next game I got from Kevin McHugh at Classic Pinball, I met him on the email. He said he had a Blast-Off, which was the comparable game to Apollo, the both Williams games. I think one's add a ball, one is free, free game. So I went up to a show he was doing somewhere in New Jersey, and that's the first time I actually physically met him. Really liked him. He's a really neat guy. We're still really good friends, and I bought this Blast-Off from him. And that's it. From then on, I don't know what game I bought next, but it ended up being the 900s.
So 3 or 4 in, you're hooked. So
what happened, I think, was that I would play a game to the best of my abilities for as long as I wanted to, and then I just finally said, I'm bored with it, but I didn't want to get rid of it, so I said I'll get another game. And so that happened for a while. I don't know how far along before I had too many games to even get to play half of them.
Okay.
But it took actually about 15 years before I actually took stock of what I was doing, because I was buying games totally for entertainment, not for a theme, just playing a different game, my own entertainment.
The newness, the freshness of, oh, it's different.
Exactly, and as I was collecting them, I was getting newer games, older games and stuff. And one day, and I would say close to 15 years into buying, and I probably had about 300 or 400 games, I had built buildings in my yard. I had built my first big building in the yard where I had an attic, which was my office, a basement, which was my restore area, and the middle floor, which was where I restored a game and brought it up, and that's where I played. And I don't know what caused me to finally say to myself, what are you doing? You got to decide on what you're doing with all this stuff. These are not like stamps. They take up a lot of room, but they're not cars either. So and in the interim, in the time that I was collecting and playing these games, I was also learning about them, learning about the people who made them, learning how to fix them, going to exhibitions and championships and stuff, and just starting to really understand the people in pinball, the interest in pinball. Talking to some of the designers and things like that, and collecting paperwork, and so that, and my decision to decide, okay, what are you doing now, led me to say, okay, I think pinball really needs a museum, and it was based on the information that I saw and learned about that. None of the companies kept any of their stuff. They were all thrown out. They never looked at what they were doing as anything more than a commodity.
Right.
It was a game. You make it. They could have been selling potatoes.
They could be making a broom.
Exactly.
There's no broom. There's no.
Exactly. So all the artwork, all the silk screens, all the
white woods,
everything,
the prototypes, the sketches.
Alvin Gottlieb told me once that there was a room up in, I think, their first factory, that they would shove a game after the run had been done and everything, so they'd shove stuff that either was prototypes or things that we're working on or they gave up on it, and they shove it in an attic. And he said about every 4 or 5 years he'd have some guys go up there and throw all the shit out. Wow. And then it would start all over again.
Wow.
Never with any intent of ever keeping the stuff, but maybe an idea would.
That's like an artist making a bunch of paintings. I'm gonna put it in my attic, and it's season cleaning for the.
And they did that.
Wow.
So once I made a real conscious decision to go forward with trying to build a museum, it really gave me a direction, because up until then, as I said, I was basically playing and collecting games for my own entertainment.
Right.
The change was dramatic in terms of, I said, I'm no longer collecting games for me.
Right.
I'm collecting them for the public to view, for the public to see what I see in terms of the value of pinball and its art and its history and its American iconographic development throughout the last 50 years. So it gave me a direction in terms of what I should collect. And the first thing was obviously games that had historic significance toward pinball, meaning first flipper game, first game with a back glass, first game with a pop bumper, first game with a dead bumper, first game multi-ball, all these things that were milestones in the development of pinball. That led me to, really starting to research pinball much deeper, which brought me to Bagatelle, which brought me to France and all the early stuff, and how its origin came about. Because very little of that stuff had ever been written about, because they didn't feel anybody had that much interest in it.
Right.
So, and then I started collecting games that had historic references to our American history. So it was games that represented a milestone in our American history, whether it was the first spaceship or the first, the coronation of Queen Elizabeth, something that had significance, so that it gave a kind of a timeline and date to what pinball was doing at that particular time in history. And if I collected well enough, pinball in itself could tell the history of America through its actual physical game.
It does.
And it also gave the physical, visual development of the artwork, because artwork changed from Parker to the next person to the next person, and because art styles changed as well. So it's not a static thing. It went along with the times, especially clearly you can see today where they're making games, like AC/DCs, stuff that, are rock icons that they know people are aware of, so they're picking subject matter that, again, is really keeping track of our own history. And that's what I try to really make people who come to the museum, not only for the arcade appeal, being able to play games, but for the fact that rarely does a person come out of the museum saying, I can't believe pinball has such a history, So to me, that's one of the biggest accomplishments I can make. But I also have to be very much aware of the fact that pinball is a game to play. And so that is part of the responsibility of a museum, especially an interactive museum, to let the people play and educate them at the same time. You can do that on the games they play as well, because if you have enough variety of games that you're comfortable with letting them play, and I'm old enough and I have enough games to not feel that these things are any precious things anymore to me. They were originally, when I restored a game, I didn't want anyone near it. But now it's the fact that the games were made to be played.
Right.
There's very little on a pinball machine, in and on a pinball machine, that can't be either repaired or restored.
Right.
So it's not like people are going to destroy your machines. If you have a good staff that continuously waxes and cleans, there's no reason, and changes balls and stuff, there's no reason why you can't keep the game in very good condition. I never expected the games that I played maybe, 3 times a week to be played 1,000 times a week. And they have been, because we have a card system that reads how many times the games have been played. And I'm telling you, they've been played thousands of times. So I really directed myself toward heading for a museum. And once, like a local newspaper would write an article on the guy who has 500 pinball machines in his backyard, that kind of stuff. That would lead to other. What happened first is I had a woman design a website for me, because I wanted people to be aware of what I was trying to do. And the best place to announce it is on a website, because so many people can read it and see it.
Instant, globally.
Exactly. And I had remembered seeing a movie called Tucker. About the automobile. In the movie, Jeff Bridges, one of the person who's the salesperson, Marty Landau, says to him, "But you haven't built the car yet." He said, "That's not important. They got to see in the magazine that the car's going to exist."
All right.
So in a sense, the website is making people aware that the concept was there.
Right.
The matter of where it was going to be had to do with me. So once I started getting articles and interviews, I took that main floor of my building in the backyard and set it up like a museum arcade. And then had people come every Saturday to visit with a donation, and it basically snowballed. It went from one thing to another until they started writing articles saying, Pinball Man looking for a home for his museum. But you can't build a museum in your backyard. It's not legal.
No, if it was, you would, huh? If it was.
Probably. Well, I have the land. I own the land. You have the land. But it's not.
Yeah, if it was, that'd be cool, but no.
So I started getting emails from people in different locations all across the country saying, we have an old Sears building we're willing to give you in this place.
Wow.
But all of these places were way out of my area. So, you know, I thanked them, but I said, I can't move to Connecticut. I can't move to the end of Long Island. And then I got a phone call from the leasing agent at Georgetown Park in D.C. And she said, I'd like to talk to you, you know, as an email, and about your pinball museum idea. So we got together, sat down, and this was in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. And Georgetown, very populated area. It's a very touristy area. The building, it's a beautiful building. It was, I think, the one and only, I don't know if there are any more, mall in the actual interior of Washington, D.C. It was built, it was renovated twice, I think, but it was built in the style of the Georgetown style. It's not old, so it's not historic.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, this is a really interesting possibility because it's right in a very populated area. So we talked and we hemmed and hawed over a bunch of stuff, and basically we agreed that they would bring us in because we could be a tourist attraction, and they needed more tourists. And through that, they would give us free rent with a small percentage of the intake, the taking of money for admission. We had no idea, and I really don't know whether the leasing agent knew this or not, but during that actual negotiation, before I even signed, the owner of the building, and that's a corporation as well,
right,
was probably thinking about defaulting on his loan.
All right, yeah.
So before I even started to renovate, I was in trouble without knowing it. The leasing agent was always positive, said, anytime I came up with a thing like, you know, I just read in the paper that the museum has, the mall has gone up for auction. And she would say, oh, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. They're probably going to buy it back, you know, get a better price. And practically every day I go down there and say, so, and it happened. I said, well, the auction's supposed to be on the 15th of June. 15th of June came and went. Nothing happened. I said, what happened? They said, postponed it. It wasn't until August that she came in and said, the building's been sold to a large corporation called Vornado, which is everywhere. I said, so what does that mean? She said, it probably doesn't really mean anything. This is what she said, they would be very foolish to change leasing agents when we've been here all this time. We know our client base.
The area, yeah.
So, don't worry about it. So we're in the throes now of renovating. With her telling me initially that we're going to give you a two-year lease, but only because we expect to renovate, so we don't know how long after the 2 years it's going to take to renovate. So I said, well, could we be here 5 years, 10 years? She said, yeah, you know, it's probably going to end up that by the time we get to renovate, we'll probably do it in sections and stuff. So I went full steam ahead with a 2-year lease to build a museum. So I was naive into believing that she knew what was happening when she really didn't.
She was wishful thinking, like, I would like this gig that I have to last. I would like to be here.
Yeah, because
I'm
she
comfortable. She was comfortable,
and she was innovative in wanting us there. She was the one who really pushed to have us there.
Right. It's kind of her baby too, you know. Hey,
exactly.
Let's do this.
You know, I'm going to look really good because I brought this thing in. So I won't say like in Jurassic Park we spared no expense, but we built it right. I mean, we renovated the whole place. It was a hole. It had been empty for 13 years, and it was the old FAO Schwartz toy store, and a lot of the built-ins were still there. So I looked at the space, and it was an interesting space because it wasn't a square, it wasn't a rectangle. It had lots of nooks and crannies, and there were areas that I could make the theater, I could make the library. So I really liked the space. You know, you learn from experience. Later that I realized that the play area was way too small. They had made verbal agreements that all of the utilities were working.
Right.
And the air conditioning was not working. And when I brought it up to attention, she said, "Ooh, you know, oh, okay. So how much will that cost?" And she said, "Well, I'll get our air conditioning people in." All this kind of nonsense. And ultimately, they never fixed the air conditioning. And the new company that came in said, "It's not in writing. We didn't make any deal with you." So they never. So it got to be 105 one day in there. We had to close the place down. It was so hot. So we started worrying because we didn't know what this new company planned on doing. So we took the initiative and met with them and said, "We need to know what's happening here because our lease is going to be up in December, and we planned things. You got to plan well ahead of doing any kind of shows and parties and things. We can't tell a person, oh, give us the money for a party and we're out of the place." So the guy who was so in the interim, she comes to me and says, "Oh, by the way, I was fired." And I said, "What?" "You're the person who brought me in." She says, "I know, but unfortunately, they're putting in their own leasing agent, and all of us are gone." My stomach went to my feet. I said, "What about the big party you're going to have for the opening? What about things you said you were going to do for us, all this kind of stuff?" "Well, I'm sorry. I'm fired. I'm out of here." So she left us absolutely high and dry. So we had to live with an unknown because we were way over the top of the mountain. We were going down the other side.
Yeah.
So we finally, as I said, pressed them by calling, and their corporate office is in New Jersey. So we have to go from the usual, merry-go-round. Finally, we got the person who was now in charge of leasing, which was in New Jersey. And we said, we really want to stay. We'd like to extend our lease in the same manner as we had before. So he says, "Let me get back to you. I'm not the final decision maker in this." So in about a week, he emails us and says, one, not extending your lease, and two, you're out of here by December. We were like shocked. But we said, well, we got 4 or 5 months. Got to do what we got to do. First you're knocked over by it, and then you start to recover, and you say, okay, you got to go move on from here. Then 4 days after that, we get a letter from this company, Vornado's lawyers. Now it's all lawyers. That says, we've read your license agreement, and it says that you have a clause that says for no reason you can be removed from the premises in 60 days if we, the leaseor, wants it, and we're taking that option. Now, instead of going to December, we got 60 days to get out.
Wow.
I went to a lawyer, real estate lawyer, basically said, you don't have a leg to stand up. So I was obviously naive. It was out of my control, but I was naive. Then we wrote this letter basically saying, you know, we need time to try to recoup some money to be able to move. I mean, it took us 6 months to build this. Now we're going to have to move in 60 days. So they gave us till September. That's when we started looking. Looked all over Washington. Square foot price was outrageous. We looked into Crystal City in Virginia. We looked to Alexandria. We looked all. It was impossible. I mean, no one was willing to give us any space. We were telling them what we could pay, even ones that were not so great locations. And it was really a rush race to try to find a place, which is what I didn't want to do after learning all that I had learned from the first experience. But you know, to store all the stuff that we had done, besides the games, we had built, you know, this history area and the walls and all kinds of stuff, and it's going to take a lot of room to store. So, and it was going to end up costing us probably, if we could find a place, as much to store as it would be to open.
Right.
So we looked, and finally, member of our board of directors and operating director of operations, and I sat down together and we said, why don't we look in Baltimore? So we went about it in a completely different way. We looked for real estate people who dealt with corporate spaces. One place contacted us because they had seen an article in a magazine and said, hey, we can help you. We met with them. They told us what they could do for us. It sounded very professional. And we signed an agreement that they would be our agent in finding a commercial space within the price that we had designated we could afford. Within a week, they produced a booklet that had about 12 properties in it. And so for the next, week, 2 weeks, we went to every property with our agents, and we were like on a high. They were saying, oh, we'll give you back this, you'll get so much square footage back free. You know, it's like, oh my God, we're finally finding people who really care, you know. But so we told our agent, okay, here's 5 of the 12 properties that we really think we could work with in terms of distance to the inner harbor, traffic, all kinds of stuff, how much work had to be done with a minimal but limited budget. All of a sudden, things start like going south. Oh, well, what we promised is not quite what, you know, and we're not sure, you know, we don't think that really you're well established enough, but, you know, it comes down to one place, the place we're in now, and they start giving us stipulations. Well, what they did, and it's very correct on their part, is they looked at our balance sheets and all of our accounting, and they said, we don't think you can support what you expect to pay us every month, so we want you to put $30,000 in escrow. I said, if I had $30,000, I wouldn't be here. You know, I said, that's a lot more money than we have because we've spent all this money moving out, trying to get trucks, ripping the place apart, everything. I mean, this doesn't take 5 minutes to take down all the lighting, take down the wall sconces, all this stuff. So they said, okay, we'll give you a better deal. We'll take $15,000 in escrow. We'll give you a 1-year license agreement. And they are a non-profit as well, and they had left the building a year and a half before to merge with another non-profit. So the building was empty, and finally, after a lot of deliberation, we came to an agreement and started moving in, setting up. So we had to be out of Georgetown September, I think, 15th. And it took us from September 15th to January 15th to do what we could do. They were very restrictive. Their license agreement said you can't do anything without our permission. You can't build anything. You can't tear anything down without our permission. It got so picayune that they wanted paint chips of the color we wanted to paint the building. The building was a hodgepodge of colors. Red on the posts, blue on the walls, white ceilings, all kinds of stuff. And so we gave them paint samples and waited. Finally, I called up this guy and I said, come on, man, we're sitting here waiting. We can't establish anything until we paint these walls. Finally, he came and he said, yeah, okay. This was an interesting bit of one hand knowing too much what the other did. The guy who was our leasing agent was also on their board of directors. So he's like master of two heads. You know, he one, we signed an agreement that they would be our exclusive representative. Two, he's on the board of directors where they are his master.
Wow.
So it was very touch and go because he was juggling balls. Anyway, to make the long story short, they finally let us, quote, build a few walls. I mean, the place it's old. It's an old building. The building is historic, which simply means the face of the building can't be changed. They built everything around the damn thing. So we finally start doing our small amount of build out, painting the ceilings, painting the walls, getting it kind of into a museum quality without, your eyes going in every direction. And build what we could with the limited funds that we did. And so we opened January 15th. With a diminished opening schedule by one day. In Georgetown, we were open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Now we're open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. One, of course, was because of cost as well. If you open another day, yes, you might make it back with your guests coming in, but you're also paying people to staff the space. So we said, why don't we start with Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? And it has paid off doing it that way. Now, we remember this in the middle of winter, so again, we're not seeing the reality of what Baltimore Inner Harbor can be like.
Like
you
now.
can see around now, this is like just the beginning of the season, and the people who we've met and talked to around here have said this place is marvelous, especially because we're close to this thing called PowerPoint Live, which is all these concerts, these venues, pizza places, beer places, high-end restaurants, all kinds of stuff. So this has a great nightlife. As I said earlier, what we're working to do is to build on connecting with this nightlife,
right.
Doing certain deals with maybe some of these concert venues and saying, in between or before the concert, come to the Pinball Museum, you get 10% off.
Save your ticket, hey.
Exactly. Do anything somehow in conjunction with the other place. We did that with one of the pizza places right here, which worked out beautifully. And what we found in Baltimore was that they were very excited about us coming. They were very excited excited and willing to help us. There's one place, Joe Square, which is a pizza place here, which actually has very good pizza, and I love pizza. Not that I eat any more of it anymore, but he brought over 18 pizzas the first day we opened, and people, were mulling around eating in the first floor where they're allowed to eat.
Yeah.
And so there was a real sense of camaraderie between the places, and it's still been like that. They've been opening new things. Baltimore is a very fluid city in terms of big buildings being torn down, other buildings are built up. So there's lots of stuff going on, and we're learning the city. We're learning the community around us. We're trying to work with right next to us. Well, just half a block away from us is the Children's Museum, and buses go in and out of that place constantly during the week. So the potential is there. It's a matter of capturing the people who will go in and out of Baltimore, and them, of course, telling their friends and things like that, and marketing ourselves. And again, there's nothing that you get for free in this world. So marketing costs money. So we have to prioritize what we have to do, and that's why the third floor to us is a priority, because one, it's another announcement that says, hey, we now have another floor open for you guys to enjoy. Two, we can do it relatively inexpensively because I'm basically doing some of the workers that I have. It's our space. Why not use it? Gives people more games to play. It decreases the volume in which each game is being played to spread over a larger area.
And it expands replay, interest.
Exactly.
The more games,
exactly.
The
They want to see different variety. Exactly. And in the short period of time that we've been here, we've gotten, I'd say, about 25 donated games. And that certainly adds to a collection of different eras that I really didn't collect.
Right.
Like we just got a 1776.
Right.
We got a Mr. and Mrs. Pac-Man. We've gotten Monte Carlo. We've gotten a lot of games that are in an era that I'd never really focused on. But 1776 is a really important game because of the bicentennial. And so they're helping us to grow. We have a good technician staff that really work together very well, which is wonderful. We have a really good organizer, and we have a board and says what's wrong with the game. Each game has a little book inside. So if a guy is cleaning the game, he'll write, "Guy cleaned the game on this date" and stuff. So we have a record of what's going on with each game. And if there are issues, the technicians will write it on our board, say, okay, we'll look for this. And my kind of coordinator, the guy who coordinates stuff with me, says, okay, we need to order these parts. I do the part ordering. So when those parts come in, certain games can get fixed. So, anyone who knows that they have a bunch of pinball machines and they're being played knows that you got to have parts, and you have to have parts on hand to make sure some games, like flipper coils, flipper brackets.
And the right one.
Yeah, and so you've got to have those in stock. I mean, some games are difficult. Capcom is very difficult to get parts, especially boards. And Capcom's boards are like hen's teeth. I mean, they're harder and harder to get. Where we just had one repaired that had major work. We couldn't do it. There was so much work to be done on it because the most inexpensive Capcom board we could find is $350. So because we have so many different companies' games, Data East, Capcom, Godly, Williams, Bally, Sega, Stern. I mean, and we've got early games from United and from Chicago Coin and exhibit supply. I mean, so every game needs something different. We were very, very lucky. 2 or 3 weeks ago, an amusement company on the outskirts of the city found that we were here, and they said, would you be interested us to donate old pinball parts to you, because we don't do very much pinball work. So I said, oh my God, of course yes, because those are what we're looking for all the time. So we went down there and we took a whole van load of stuff that they gave us, hundreds of coils, light bulbs, fixtures, brackets, all kinds of stuff that we'd have to pay for it. So of course they get a tax donation because we're a 501(c) nonprofit, but it's also cleaning out stuff they don't use, and it's stuff that we potentially can use, and we actually have used quite a bit of some of this stuff. So that kind of hospitality really makes it desirable to be in a place that really wants us to succeed. And we, of course, try to promote the different businesses around here as well, and want to do more of them. So, it's another new beginning. The younger volunteers always energize me because it's exhausting, and I have a full-time job as a landscape contractor, and that's what brings me my livelihood. That's the only way I can do anything, especially maintain my home and my family and all the bills. And it's all of this museum has been on my financial back, which I'm not a big, huge guy who's got lots of money, so I don't have to take a salary, I don't get any money back, all that kind of stuff. So it's a big, huge drain. Maybe if I was smarter, I wouldn't have done this. But as my wife said, listen, this is your passion. This is one of the few times that you have. How many people have a chance to actually live out their dream, which is build a pinball museum?
Almost never.
So I'm lucky because, one, she's been supportive of that. Two, because I've had people who respond to that. I wish I had more people who were similar to me in terms of such a burning passion for pinball that they want to be here all the time. I'm here as much as I can be.
Right.
But it takes a community to run a pinball museum, and I'm hoping to develop a community,
right,
because that's what's going to make it successful for them, for the people of Baltimore, and for me, so that it doesn't become overwhelming, because it's overwhelming.
And the community's spread out, because I'm coming from Jacksonville, Florida. I was here for work last year. I'm driving up for fun this year, and a lot of your people are your guests or visitors from
Pennsylvania, from all over. I've had a lot of Chicago people. I've had people come from Canada. I was really surprised. But pinball people are an interesting breed. They'll not think twice about driving 800, 900 miles to get a game. I remember I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. I'm just too old and tired. But last weekend, we put on 600 or 700 miles. We went to the Pennsylvania eastern shore of
New
Jersey, into Delaware, down into Allentown, back down into Pennsylvania, back to Maryland, in a day and a half. It was crazy. I spent more time in a car, but it was worth it. But I don't have the luxury of doing that often, because I'm trying to juggle two major things, the museum and my landscape company, besides my home life and all the stuff that takes place there. So I would love to have more input from others. I'm not this is not David Silverman's National Pinball Museum to me. It might be in terms of the finances in my games,
right,
but the fact is I want this to be a community effort so that the community can benefit from it and participate in it.
So other people, if they want to donate a game or loan a game, they can say, hey,
absolutely,
I want this game on the floor for people to play because no one gets to play it.
Right. We have one guy that I'm trying to find his number, I lost it somewhere, who said he was willing to loan his Medieval Madness for a game that we have, so that we'd switch games because he's tired of his Medieval Madness and we have enough games for him to pick a game out.
Right.
We would love to have a Medieval Madness because people want to play that game.
Right.
And we don't have the funds to buy it. So, you know, that's happened a number of times. We've traded games where a person had a game I wanted and I said, hey, you interested in this game? And they said, yeah, okay. So they basically said, we'll swap. You get this, I get that. And it's great. As I said, the older I get, the less precious they become to me. And I think that's really good because a person who generally is a collector wants to keep their games in perfect, pristine condition. And I used to do that. I mean, I used to be nuts about it, you know, cleaning the balls, changing the balls, cleaning the rubbers, taking the rubbers off, doing everything, cleaning the playfield, making sure that the game was, like, you know, perfect. But one, I don't have the time anymore to do that. And when I decided that my games that were my private collection were going to now be put on public display and use, you can't be that way anymore. But what I've learned also is that I never expected the games to be played that much, and that games get dirty so much faster. Rubbers get filthy. We try to
black
clean
rubbers, and unless you use all white, even if you use all white, still.
And it's crazy. We have cleaned a game, and remember, we're only open 3 days a week. We have cleaned the game 1 week. The next week, the rubbers are black. And that's after cleaning the playfield, cleaning the rubbers. It's just because it's endlessly played. You know, it's a testament actually to the pinball companies that the amount of times that these games have played, that they are still functioning with minimal repair. I mean, when we get a game in that has been, let's say, a donated game, there's so many things wrong with them because homeowners who are not pinball collectors or anything really don't know what to do with them.
No.
You know, they maybe get a guy in once a year to do it. So we get these games with burned out stuff all over the place. So when we get a game up and running and ready to put out on the floor, that game has really been gone through. Lots of parts have been changed. Pins and connectors have been repaired or completely removed, and boards have been replaced. So the games are in better shape and can take that abuse for, you know, a while before something else breaks down and stuff. But getting it to the point of being set up and ready to play really gets the game in good shape for people to play. You know?
Yeah, the overhaul of any game, it lasts a while, and especially lasts a long time in maintenance because, you know, it's like a car. When you overhaul a car, you don't change the oil, you don't change the bushings, you know, you don't change the shocks. It's not going to ride right, and you got to play it. But when you ride it hard,
you've got to maintain it.
Ride it hard, you know.
Well, we polish our games and clean our games once a week.
I see it.
We replace our balls once a month. I'll go through all the balls and look at them. If they have nicks or, you know, scratches or anything, they're out. Games, you know, balls that might be a slight amount of rust, I'll throw them into the polisher. And, you know, after 3 days of running around in walnut husks, if they're not shiny and pits and stuff have come out of them, they're gone.
Yeah.
So, you know, especially with a lot of 50s games that have 5 balls in them, that runs into a lot of pinballs.
Yeah.
So we buy them, I think we buy them 250 at a time.
Right.
I think there's a price break at a half. I think a full box is 500 and a half box is 250, so we still get a price break on it. But
then we always give the old pinballs to kids, little kids who like to hold
Yeah,
something in their
souvenir.
hands. Yeah. So it's kind of I remember as a kid, I always had something in my pocket that was very special to me. So pinball just sitting in your pocket, that can be like a little talisman for
It goes from
kids.
a worry coin to a worry ball.
Right. So, I've seen a lot of different ages, ethnic, everything, different people.
Nice to see you guys.
Yeah, you take a little rest now. Your hair's getting a little too tall for me. You gotta get a haircut.
I don't want to.
Not yet.
So it's gone from your personal fulfillment to fulfillment of everybody who wants to be
exactly.
fulfilled by pinball, and it's expanded to that.
Give people, I always wanted people to consider the museum as a place for them to hang out, enjoy pinball, see the history, get some classes, and that's why we're doing these workshops, to start to introduce having actual classes for young kids, for disadvantaged kids, to get some scholarships, to take some classes in not so much the care and maintenance of pinball, but to learn the trades that go into building a pinball machine. So if it's woodworking, if it's electronics, if it's airbrushing, if it's stenciling, if it's silk screening, all of those are elements that go into a pinball machine, but they're also the elements that go into jobs.
Yeah.
And so a person who has taken classes in woodworking to build the box structure and learn how to use the equipment has learned a trade that he can use in any subject, and go take more classes in woodworking, and become a tradesman.
And education is the application of knowledge. So you're teaching people, applicable knowledge as opposed to just words.
In a fun atmosphere.
Yeah.
To work together to learn how to silkscreen for the purpose of something.
Right.
Is an enjoyable experience. They're learning a whole different way to approach things. They're meeting new people, and at the same time, you can play a game that you've worked